The Hulk only has 3 or sometimes 4 toes, and Iron Man plugs into a regular wall socket, this time on Reading the Avengers. Avengers number 2 came out 2 months after Avengers number 1. I didn't realize this comic was on an every other month schedule at the beginning of its run. I've gone back and I double checked, and it seems like this is something that will continue as the Avengers continues. So something to keep in mind, I suppose, and a lot of things could have happened in other characters' comics between Avengers installments. Now in this issue of the Avengers, we're supposed to infer that the Avengers have been meeting regularly since Avengers number 1. In fact, this comic begins at one of their regular meetings. Now, at first, it's only the Hulk, Iron Man, and Thor at the meeting. They're waiting for Ant-Man and Wasp to show up. Of course, when they first show up, they don't see them right away because they're small, and this time around, they're taking a pill to grow. I don't know if this is how the Pym particles worked at the beginning or what, but they take a pill to grow to full size or human size so they can interact with the rest of the Avengers. Now, while they're meeting and talking about whatever Avengers talk about when, they're off panel, Space Phantom shows up. Now, this is the first appearance of the Space Phantom, or a Space Phantom. I know that down the line, other writers and other creators would flesh out just what exactly a Space Phantom is. But for now, all we know is that he's some sort of advanced guard or maybe even scout for a force that's coming to take over or attack the Earth. And Space Phantom has this idea: if he can sow discord amongst the Avengers, since they're such a young team and all, he can make the Avengers break up and they won't be in their way when the Space Phantom's forces show up to do whatever it is they're going to do to the Earth. Now, Space Phantom has a very specific power. What he can do, or what it can do, is impersonate somebody. And when he or it impersonates somebody, he sends that person to limbo. So all of a sudden we're combining a science fiction alien thing with limbo, which is something a little bit more metaphysical, which I suppose is par for the course for anything drawn or created or co-created by Jack Kirby. It's also described and explained a little bit more in depth later on by other creators and that sort of thing down the line. But for now, all we know is that when Space Phantom takes the form of somebody, that person goes to limbo. Now, when Space Phantom, when it takes the form of somebody, it also takes on the attributes and the properties of that person. So he decides, or it decides, I keep going back and forth on the pronouns. I'm just going to call him he for the rest of the book because, well, that's how he's presented in the comic. But I don't know what Space Phantom's pronoun should be. Anyway, when he takes on the form of the Incredible Hulk goes to limbo. And as Hulk, he starts some arguments and some fights, specifically with Iron Man and Thor. Now, what's interesting here? First of all, Space Phantom has observed the Avengers long enough that he has figured out that Iron Man is Tony Stark. Now, the rest of the Avengers don't know this. This is not public knowledge at the time. He hasn't come out as Tony Stark or anything like that. Yes, they're meeting at Tony Stark's house. Yes, Tony Stark has put up the funds in the Capitol to fund this whole thing. At least that's what we learn down the line. So the Avengers just kind of assume that Iron Man's another Tony Stark employee, which was kind of the thing at the time. That was the continuity, and that's what was understood. So Hulk begins fighting these other 2 Avengers, and Ant-Man and Wasp really can't do a heck of a lot, but Ant-Man can turn into Giant Man. Here's the first time we see Ant-Man turn into Giant Man as an Avenger, which means we've already got a kind of sort of roster change, and we're going to have one by the time this comic is over, because by the time this comic is over, once Space Phantom has been dealt with, the Hulk understands that everybody hates him. Nobody likes him. He's going to go pound sand and quit the team. And honestly, I didn't not expect this. I've always struggled a little bit whenever Hulk turns up in a team somewhere. I've always felt like Hulk works best as a solo act, as an individual. He's never really struck me as a superhero type, to be honest. The Hulk is a monster. He's a monstrosity. He's a beast. He's unchecked rage. He's a Jekyll and Hyde. And I've never really understood the draw to put the Hulk in a heroic light. I know the MCU does this quite a bit. I know that there was a long-running TV show with the Hulk as a hero. But really having him team up with other characters, especially when Hulk sometimes doesn't really get it all the time, It just never really worked for me. And I'm guessing it didn't really work for Stan and Jack because they have him leave the team right after he helped found the team 2 months ago. Something else in this comic that I think sometimes cannot be overstated. Rick Jones. Rick Jones turns up in this comic again, and he's actually the first person to think that the Hulk's acting a little weird, and yeah, it's the Space Phantom. But what I want to get to here is Rick Jones. Rick Jones is an underutilized element. I don't think Rick Jones has even shown up in the MCU, has he? I'd have to go back and rewatch the Incredible Hulk film, but Rick Jones is so intrinsic to the origin of the Incredible Hulk, yet we have no Rick Jones, or at least no regular Rick Jones appearances in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'd like to see Rick Jones turn up, but I don't know how you'd quite do it at this point since you've had so much with the Hulk, as well as Captain America, because he does some things with Captain America too in the comics down the line. I just miss that character. We'll see him in the comics though. He becomes a very important character as we go along. I know Kurt Busiek used him quite a bit during an Avengers miniseries that is just phenomenal, but that's many years down the line, and we'll talk about that eventually, I'm sure. I mentioned at the top of this that Iron Man plugs into the wall. Okay, yeah, to charge up, he has what looks like an electrical plug plugged into what looks like a regular electrical wall outlet. Sure. Okay. And the other thing is the 3 or 4 toed Hulk. I went back and I double checked. I didn't notice this in issue number 1 when I first read it, but now that I've gone back to reread it, yeah, I see it there. Also, they even went back and made sure to include it in issue 1.5, which was a special that they released years later. You also see the 3 or 4 toed Hulk in future issues of early Avengers. Why this is, I don't think it's ever really explained. I know that this has been talked about on various websites over the years. Comic Book Resources has talked about it, other websites have talked about it, and I don't know if anybody's really come up with a definitive answer as to why the Hulk only has 3 toes and sometimes 4. It is a mutation due to the gamma radiation or something? I don't know. If you know, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know, and we'll talk about it on a future installment of Reading the Avengers. I already talked a little bit about how this comic ends. The Hulk takes off, Space Phantom is defeated, and the Avengers now are a little concerned about what the Hulk's going to do since the Avengers aren't around to kind of keep him in check. It feels like nobody really respected the Hulk to begin with. I'm not really sure why the Hulk was part of the team at the very beginning anyway. I mean, they needed something to kind of push everything together, with Loki using the Hulk to kind of sow some discord amongst the heroes. And you know what? This is 2 issues in a row now where a supervillain is trying to use some sort of subterfuge to get the superheroes to not get along or fight each other or draw each other out. I hope this doesn't continue. I know the Hulk does turn up in the next issue alongside Namor, the Submariner, which should be really exciting. Also, I'm hoping that here real soon, the Wasp gets a little bit more to do than swoon over how gorgeous Thor is or get lost in Hank Pym's Baby Blues. I mean, come on. If you like this video, please consider giving us a thumbs up, ring the bell, subscribe, and stay tuned because there will be many, many more installments of Reading the Avengers. My name's Derek M. Cook. Thanks for watching.